out there in YouTube land.
Welcome back.
This is our annual ghost story episode. Ha 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 ha. So, why don't you start us off this time, Tabby?
Well, this one's actually pretty recent, as in 2 nights ago. So, driving, kind of evening-ish on the road near my house. We were heading into town. And another car was coming, opposite. And I thought for a split second as our headlights crossed, this deer ran out. And I could tell you that it was a doe. I could tell you she was pretty sizable. And I could also tell you that she ran right through the other car.
Like through the side of it?
Through the side. Not into the side. Not into the other car. Not into my car. Through it.
So we have some ghost animals in West Virginia.
I think we have a lot of them.
Yeah.
Particularly that deer. Because on the trip back, there was no dead deer.
Well, I don't have any stories about ghost animals, but I do have one about some ghost onions.
Now that's cool.
Well, not technically ghost onions, but my cousin, who we talked about last year, who had a Ouija board and say that it wanted to stab him, he lived in an apartment in the college side of town. And so I used to go over there rather often to watch horror films and whatnot, as we would do. And at the time, he decided that he wanted to get into having his tarot cards read. And I read tarot cards relatively often. And so I was like, okay, sure, I'll read for you. Well, he'd had some weird experiences happen in this apartment. Like, he would, go to sleep, and about 4 o'clock in the morning, he'd suddenly hear somebody come into the house, and then open the refrigerator door. And then he would get up and nobody was there.
Hungry ghost?
I guess so. So, at any rate, he and I were sitting there, and he was depressed at the time, and so I was telling him his tarot cards. And his roommate had got a whole new bag of onions. You get the plastic bags of onions from the grocery store. And he had hung them on a nail in the kitchen, where they put their onions, which I thought was really weird, but, whatever. 2 males in the apartment. So... So, at any rate, it was kind of funny because they, the onions were brand new. Nothing was wrong with the bag of onions. But as I sat there reading the tarot cards, suddenly the whole seam of the bottom of the bag burst open and onions traveled across the floor. And rolled to a stop right at where we were sitting on the floor in the living room.
Now that's kind of fun.
So there's our ghostly onions. Oh.
Apparently we're in the spirit because our candles like to go out every now and again.
So we can find that being a little bit added atmosphere.
So, I live in a very old farmhouse. And it's on my husband's family's property. We have a lot of interesting things go on, especially this time of year. So, it is not unusual in our house to hear things, to feel things, and sometimes it's a matter for everybody to see. So, one evening, I was getting ready for bed, laid down, we turned the lights out, and we have Scottish deerhounds. And they are, pretty large dogs. And nothing really gets them riled much. So, at about, I thought we'd been asleep for quite a while. All of a sudden we are thrown awake because all 3 hounds are growling, snapping, barking at our bedroom door. So, of course, we're startled. We get up, we check the entire house, we check around the house. Nothing to be seen, nothing to be heard. The dogs finally calmed down, and I mean they were very inspired, I happened to look at the clock, and it was probably around 3:20 in the morning.
Oh.
So they saw something we did not.
It's interesting how animals can see things.
It is, and all of them will track things. We've seen anything from shadow people to some full apparitions walking through the house.
I know that I had an experience in your house one Halloween, actually,
You did.
which was very interesting. It was not long after Tabby had been living in that house, and she wasn't married yet to her now husband. But they used to throw a yearly Halloween party. And so we decided that since I lived quite a ways away, that I would just spend the night, so I wouldn't have to worry about anything, and I could drink if I wanted to and whatnot. And so I had gone to sleep in their spare bedroom, and I was jerked awake in the middle of the night by a man, and I could feel his breath on my ear, screaming in Spanish. I look over, and there's no one there. And so I'm like, I don't speak English. And I heard another Spanish word. And so then I, said, no habla español, and it went away. Now, the interesting thing about this is that, to Tabby's knowledge, there's never been anyone that, is of Spanish-speaking descent,
No.
Anywhere near the farm.
No, I would say, well, I mean, the great-great-grandparents were from Russia.
So, we have no idea where the spirit who spoke Spanish was from, but that's the only time I've ever had a Spanish-speaking ghost try to get my attention. Talk
about a rude awakening.
Yeah. Poor man evidently really needed something that I couldn't help him.
So what ghost stories do you have? What are you interested in?
Because we're sure there's people out there that have some pretty good ones.
Oh, yeah.
To go along with our little werewolf theme we've been having on all month, we had a quasi-werewolf experience when I first moved out in this house. And where I live is another house out in the country, but in the total opposite direction of Tabby's house. And when we first moved in here, we would hear faintly in the distance a howl at night, because my father and I would sit out on the back porch once in a while, because there's this great big back porch that has rocking chairs and whatnot, and it's interesting to watch the animals and everything. So we would be sitting there, and this, would go, and we're like, that's interesting. And, at first thought, we're like, okay, somebody's dog is howling, whatever.
Right.
And it didn't sound like a coyote or anything, because there are coyotes that move through, but it didn't have that type of sound. And then we'd hear it again. But it had kind of a almost sound effect quality to it, I would almost say, because it sounded like it was traveling oddly and just, kind of overexposed. Like you'll hear if somebody puts something through like a music program or something.
Yeah.
And it was just really strange. But, we live clear out in the country. There's nowhere that somebody could have sneaked out with giant Marshall Stack speakers to play just a werewolf howl. And so we started calling it the werewolf. And we would hear it roughly once a month.
Around the full moon.
Yeah. And then it happened for about 2 years. Every time we'd sit on the porch, we would hear this howl, and then it quit. So there's our little werewolfy story.
So let us know. Talk to us about your ghosts, and say hello to them if they're in your house.
Above all, have a very happy Halloween. Until next time.
Bye.